Kanthapura, Chapter 5. The Skeffington Coffee Estate rises beyond the Babur Mound over the Bears Hill and hanging over Tipur and Subur and Kantur. It swings round the Elephant Valley and rising to shoulder the Snow Mountains and the Beda Ghats. It dips sheer into the Himavati and follows on from the Belpur toll gate corner to the Kenchamma hill, where it turns again and skirts Bhatta's Devil's Fields and Rangegoda's Coconut Garden, and at the Tipur stream it rises again and is lost amidst the jungle growths of the Horsehead Hill. Nobody knows how large it is or when it was founded, but they all say it is at least 10,000 acres wide, and some people in Kanthapura can still remember having heard of the Hunter Sahib, who used his hunter and his hand to reap the first fruits of his plantation. And then it began to grow from the Bears Hill to Kantur Hill, and more coolies came from beneath the ghats, and from the Bears Hill and Kantur it touched the snow mountains, and more coolies came. And then it became bigger and bigger till it touched all the hills around our village, and still more and more coolies came, coolies from below the ghats that talked Tamil or Telugu, and who brought with them their old men and their children and their widowed women. Armies of coolies marched past the Kenchamma temple, half naked, starving, spitting, weeping, vomiting, coughing, shivering, squeaking, shouting, moaning. Coolies after coolies passed by the Kenchamma temple, the Mestri before them, while the children clung to their mothers' breasts, the old men to their sons' arms, and bundles hung over shoulder and head, and they marched on past the Kenchamma temple and up to the Skeffington Coffee Estate. Coolies from below the ghats, coolies, young men, old women, children, baskets, bundles, pots, coolies passed on, and the winding through the twists of the estate path by the buxom people bend over the Devil's Ravine bridge by the Parvati Well corner, they marched up, the Mestri before them, the Mestri that had gone to their village, and to the village next to their village, and to the village next to that, and that is far away, a day's journey by road and a night's journey by train and a day again in it. And then along the Godavari's banks by road and by lane and by footpath, there he came and offered a 4 anna bit for a man and a 2 anna bit for a woman. And they all said, "Is there rice there?" And he said, "There is nothing but rice around us." And they all said, "That is a fine country, for here year after year we have had neither rain nor canal water, and our masters have left for the city." And so he gave them a white rupee for each, and they said, "This is a very fine man." And they all assembled at night, and Ramanna the elder said, "Now we will go a 4 anna bit for a man and a 2 anna bit for a woman." And they all said, there is rice." And the pots became empty of water, and the sacks began to grow fat with clothes, and the pots on their heads, and the clothes in their arms. They marched on and on by the Godavari, by path and by lane and by road. And the trains came, and they got into them, and the Mestri bought them a handful of popped rice for each, and a little salted gram for each. And he smiled so that they all said, "It will be fine there, a 4 anna bit for a man and a 2 anna bit for a woman." And the Mestri said, "You will just pick up coffee seeds, just pick them up as you pick up pebbles by the river." "Is that all, Mestri?" "Of course, what else? And the Sahib there, he is a fine man, a generous man, you'll see." And the trains moved on with the coolies, men, women, children. Then plains came with dust and desert, and then mountains rose before them, blue mountains, and the trains sneezed and wheezed and snorted and moved on. And the coolies all came out at Carver and marched on by the road and street and footpath, and they passed this way beneath hanging mountains, and that way over towering peaks, and the streamlets hissed over their shoulders and purred beneath their feet, and they said, there were tigers and elephants and bears in the jungles. And when the children cried, the mother said, I'll leave you here with the tigers. But if you don't cry, I'll take you over the mountains where you can have milk like water, just like water. And the child stopped crying. And the nearer they came, the harder became the road and the stiffer the mastery. And when they had all passed by the Kenchamma hill, the young men, old women, children, and mothers, the mastery stood at the back. And when they had all passed by the estate entrance, one by one, he banged the gate behind him, and they all walked up, coolie after coolie walked up. They walked up to the Skeffington bungalow. And when they had sat themselves down beneath the hanging banyan roots beside the porch, men, women, and children, the bundles and baskets beside them, the maestri went in and came out with the Sahib. A tall, fat man with golden hair, and he had spectacles large as your palm, and he looked this side at the men and that side at the women, now at the arms of Pariah Chennaiya and now at the legs of Pariah Siddhaya, and he touched Madhavanna's son Chenna. Then but a brat of 7 with the butt of his whip, and he laughed, and he wanted everyone to laugh with him. And when the child began to cry, he looked at the child's face and began to laugh at him. But the child cried more and more. And the Sahib rose up suddenly and went in and came out with a round white peppermint, and said he was not a bad man, and that everybody would get a beating when they deserved one, and sweets when they worked well. Tell them that, repeat them that, he said to the maestri who was standing behind him. And the maestri repeated, the Sahib says that if you work well, you will get sweets, and if you work badly, you will get beaten. That is the law of the place. And they all rose up like one rock and fell on the ground, saying, you are a dispenser of good, O Maharaja. We are the lickers of your feet. And the women rose behind the men, and they stood fleshy with joy, and turning to the Sahib. Madanna's widow Sankamma says, Sahib, we shall have a 2 anna bit for each woman hand, and a 4 anna bit for each man hand. And the maestri grew so fierce at this that he howled and spat at her, and said his word was the word, and that he hadn't 108 tongues. And Sankamma simply put her hand upon her stomach and gaped at him, while the Sahib said, what is all this, Antony? And Antony said something to the Sahib in the Christian tongue, and the Sahib said, you all go and settle down in your huts, and tomorrow be ready for work at 5. And they all fell down to kiss the feet of the Sahib, and the Sahib fetched a few more peppermints, and the children all ran to him, and the women came running behind them, and the men put their hands shyly between the hands of the women. And at this the maestri grew so furious again that he beat them on the back and drove them to their huts by the foot of the hill. And each one took a hut to himself, and each one began to put up a thatch for the one that had no thatch, a wall for the one that had no wall, a floor for the one that had no floor. And they spent the whole afternoon thatching and patching and plastering. And when the evening came, they all said, this will be a fine place to live in. And they slept the sleep of princesses. And the next morning they rise with the sun, and the men began to dig pits and to hew wood, and the women to pluck weeds and to kill vermin. And when the sun rises high and one rests one's axe for a while to open the tobacco pouch, or one rests one's basket to open the betel bag, there he is, the Maestri, there behind some jack, and he says, "Hey there, what are you waiting for? Nobody's marriage procession is passing. Do you hear?" And when you do not pick up your axe or put your hand to a coffee plant, he rushes down the hill, crunching the autumn leaves beneath him, and up there by the bamboo cluster, the red face of the Sahib peeps out. And they all swing their arms this way and that, and the axes squeak on the tree and the scissors on the leaves. But when the talkative Papamma opens her Ramanna and speaks of the leaks in the roofs and leaks in the measures and leaks in the morals, there is a crunch of feet again. But it dies away into the silence, only to rise on the top of the other shoulder of the hill. And they have hardly begun to work again when Lakamma cries out, "Hey, hey, hey, a snake, a huge snake, a cobra," and rushes away to hide behind a tree. And they all leave their work and come to see if there is a snake and what he looks like, but he has disappeared into the bamboo bush. And Praya Siddhaya, who has been in these estates for 10 years and more, says, "Never mind," and explains that cobras never harm anyone unless you poke your fuel chip at them. And seating himself on a fallen log, he tells you about the Dasara have that is so clever that he got into the Sahib's drawer and lay there curled up, and how the other day when the Sahib goes to the bathroom, a lamp in his hand, and opens the door to take out some soap, what does he see but our Maharaja, nice and clean and shining with his eyes glittering in the lamplight, and the Sahib, he closes the drawer as calmly as a prince, but by the time he is back with his pistol, our Maharaja has given him the slip. And the Sahib opens towel after towel to greet the Maharaja, but the Maharaja has gone on his nuptial ceremony and he will never be found. Now, continues Praya Siddhaya, mopping his face now, as for water snakes, take my word, they are as long as they are silly, like the tongues of our village hussies. They just hang over a streamlet or pond as though the whole world has closed its eyes. You can pick them up by their tails and swing them round and round once, twice, thrice, and throw them on the nearest rock you find. If they don't die, they'll at least heave basket and bundle for ages to come. But the snake that is as short as he is wicked is the green snake. You would think it was a rope, but when it is beside a bamboo, you would say, "Why, it's a bamboo leaf." That's how our Sankamma, gathering cow dung, put her hand out to remove a bamboo's leaf. And what should the bamboo leaf do but hiss and fall upon her arm, where by Kanchamma's grace she had her dung basket, and he, furious, ran back into the thicket like a barking puppy and left a palm's width of poison on the ground. He is bad enough, the green snake, but you haven't seen the flying snakes of this country. Now you know the cobra, the python, the green snake, the water snake, the krat, and the rattlesnake. And you know how they move. They move like this on the earth, like all living creatures. But here there is another monster. He flies from tree to tree, and when your turban is just a little loose and say your pate uncovered, this fine gentleman merely hangs down and gives you a nice blessing. But thank heavens, it is not with us here that he is often found. He likes the sumptuous smell of cardamoms, and his home is amongst them. That's why all these cardamom garden coolies wear, a slab thin as a cloth on their heads. There was that fellow mother who died leaving 3 children and a yelling wife. There was also that bent-legged Chandraya. He died God knows how, but they found him in the garden dead. This flying snake, I tell you, is a sly fellow. He is not like the cobra, frank in his attack and never aggressive. Why, the other day there was Ramaiya pushing the Mestri's bicycle up through the Vadawale Ghats, for the Mestri had come up in a passing lorry and the bicycle was left down at the Sukur police station, and the Mestri says, "Go and get it, Ramaiya." So Ramaiya goes down that night, and the next morning he says to himself, "Why go by the main road? There is daylight and I have the bicycle bell to ring if there is anything coming." And so he takes the Kalapur tank path, and crossing into the Siddhpur jungles, he is pushing the bicycle when he sees the flat footmarks of a tiger that must have feasted on a deer somewhere, and he says to himself, "This might be difficult business," and begins to ring the bell. Then, as he is just by a flowering aloe, what should rattle up but a huge cobra as long as this that the bicycle wheel had run down. Ramaiya cried out, "Ayo, ayo," and ran away. And after a whiff of breath and 1,008 Ramaramas, he comes back, and there is no cobra nor his dirt there. And he takes the bicycle, and looking this side and that side, he runs with it along the footpath, and no cobra pursued him. Never, I tell you, has a cobra bitten an innocent man. It was only Chennaiya's Dasappa who ever died of a cobra bite. But then he went and poked his stick into the hole, poked and poked, saying he had the eagle mark on his hand, and never a snake did harm him. But within 6 months, Father Naga slips right into his hut, and touching neither his grown-up daughter, nor his second child, nor his suckling brat, nor his wife who lay beside him, it gives him a good bite right near his bloody throat, and slips away God knows how or where. Barber Ramachandraya comes in and wails out this chant and that chant, but he was not a very learned man in his charms, and the Sappa bloody well croaked. And so he goes on Siddhaya, telling story after story, looking to this side and that for signs of the Mestri, and they all lime their bitter leaves and twist the tobacco leaves and munch on, when suddenly there is neither crunch nor cough. But the Mestri's cane has touched Venamma and Siddhamma and Putaya, and everyone is at his axe or scissors, and even a word is said, and they work on with axe and scissors till the sun's shadow is dead. But the afternoon sun is heavy and piercing, and as each axe splits the wood, or as each pick tears the earth from head and armpit and waist, the perspiration flows down the body. And when the eyes are hot and the head dizzy, Rachanna and Chandranna and Madanna and Siddhaya lean back against the trunks of the jacks, and the freckled hard bark sweats out a whiff of moisture that brings out more perspiration, and then the body grows dry and balmed. But when the eyes seek the livid skies across the leaves, there is something dark and heavy rising from the other side of the hill. Something heavy and hard and black, and the trees begin suddenly to tremble and hiss. And as Rachanna and Chandranna and Madanna and Siddhaya strike their axes against the wood, there is a gurgle and grunt from behind the bamboo cluster, and the gurgle and grunt soar up and swallow in the whole sky. The darkness grows thick as sugar in a cauldron, while the bamboos creak and sway and whine, and the crows begin to wheel round and flutter, and everywhere dogs bark and calves move, and then the wind comes so swift and dashing that it takes the autumn leaves with it, and they rise into the juggling air, while the trees bleat and blubber. Then drops fall big as the thumb, and as the thunder goes clashing like a temple cymbal through the heavens, The earth itself seems to heave up and cheep in the monsoon rains. It churns and splashes, beats against the treetops, reckless and willful, and suddenly floating forwards, it bucks back and spits forward and pours down upon the green, weak coffee leaves, thumping them down to the earth and then playfully lounging up the coffee leaves, rising with it and whirling and winnowing, spurting and rattling, it jerks and snorts this side and that, and as Rachanna and Madanna and Chandranna and Siddhaya stand beside the jacks, the drops trickle down the peeling bark, then touch the head, then the back and the waist, and once when the trees have all grown down as though whipped to a bow, there is such a swish of spray that it soaks their dhotis and their turbans and they stand squeezing them out. Then somewhere there is a lightning again and suddenly the whole Himavati valley becomes as clear as under the moon, and in Kanthapura the smoke is seen to rise from every house and curl round the golden dome of the temple, and the streets look red and clear and flat except for a returning cow or courtyard cart. Then the darkness again, and the trees bend and shiver and the bamboos creak. Hey, this wretch, what's all this noise about? Asks Madanna of Siddhaya. In this country it's like this, says Siddhaya, and once it begins there is no end to her tricks. And from the bamboo cluster the voices of women are heard, and high up there on the top of the hill the Sahib is seen with his cane and his pipe and his big heavy coat, bending down to look at this gutter and that. The rain swishes round and pours, beating against the tree tops, grinding by the tree trunks and racing down the waving paths. It swings and swishes, beats and patters, and then there is but one downpour, one steady, full, ungrudging pour, and somewhere is heard a whistle and Maestri's whistle, which whines, and Siddhaya says to Madanna, "That's for us to go home." And hey ho, the husbands call to their wives, fathers to their daughters, mothers to their sons, and elder brother to younger brother, and through slush and stream they move on. Men and women and children squeezing their clothes and wiping their hair, and the rain pours on and on, a steady, full, ungrudging rain. It's like this in the mountains. How long? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and till then eat and sleep with your woman, sleep with your woman and eat, do anything. This rain, it poured just 3 nights and 4 days, the southwest rain. And when the days became broad and the sky became blue as a marriage shawl, men and women and children rose again with the whistle to go to work. But for Rachanna's child Venki, 7 years old, and Siddhanna's wife Sati, the same who had had the stomach ache in the train, and Sampanna's sister-in-law and mother's 2 children, they all lay on their mats, for on the night before they all had chills, and the chills rose and rose, while every dhoti, coat and turban and blanket was heaped on them, and yet the chill was piercing as ever. And then came fever, leaping, flaming fever, and the whole night they grinned and grit their teeth, and they cried for water and water and water. But the elders said, "No, no one drinks water when he has fever." And with the morning the fever went down, but a weakness remained which made their heads dizzy and their stomachs nauseating. "Oh, it's the fever of this country," Siddhaya explained. "It's always like this. It harms no one. It comes every 2 days and goes away. And when you know it better, you can work with it as well as any." But this morning they would not work. It simply made them vomit at every step. When the Sahib heard of it, he sent a new man, who looked just as tall and as city bred as the Maistri, and he gave them 8 pills each, 8 pills for 2 days, and said if they took them well, the fevers would die away. But don't bother to swallow them, explained Siddhaya. They are as bitter as the neem leaves, and the fever will come just as the same. The Sahib says that in his country they are always used for fever. But he does not know our country, does he? And the women said, that is so, what does he know about us? And Siddhanna's wife Sati asked her neighbor Stamma, who had lived there for 1 year and more, what goddess sanctified the neighboring region. And when Satamma said it was our Kenchamma, she tore a rag from her sari fringe and put into it a 3 pice bit and a little rice and an areca nut, and hung it securely to the roof. And of course she woke up the next morning to find no fever at all, though Medanna's second child still had it hot, very hot. Oh, it's the grace of Kanchamma, she said to Medanna. So Medanna did the same, but the fever would not go. And so he said he would try the Sahib's pill, but his wife said, if the gods are angry, they'll take away not only your children but yourself. Oh, you man! And he, frightened, beat his cheeks and asked pardon of Sri Kanchamma. But he had had a wicked thought. Kanchamma would not forgive him. Fever on fever came, and the poor child's ribs began to show and its belly to swell. And one day, as he was just going to sleep, the child began to say this and that wildly, and they all said, go and call the Sahib. And when the Sahib came, the child shivered and died in his arms. And the Sahib grew so fierce that he gave Medanna a whipping there and then, and ordered that everybody should by his command take 6 pills a day. Some took them, but others threw them into the backyard, and the Mestri-looking man who had brought them said, if you don't take it, it does not matter. But never tell the Sahib you don't, and let me use it for myself. And the women said, of course, but one by one in this house and that in this line and that, fevers came, and when it was not fever, it was stomach ache and dysentery. And when it was not dysentery, it was cough, and one thing or the other, such things as were never heard of in the plains. On the Godavari, it is not like this, is it, Father Siddhaya? No, brother, but this wretch of a rain, and drawing away his hookah, he spat the southwest way. But the southwest rain went flying away, and then came the northeast wind, and it blew and blew until the thatches were torn away and the walls fell. And then it dripped fine, endless, unflooding rain, whilst the fever still came and went. Then Madanna's second child died too, and 2 days later Siddha's father Ramaiya and Venki's old mother, and just as children began to fall out of their mothers' wombs, children, men and women were going away and were buried or burnt on the banks of the Himavati. Then Praya Rangaiya said, we'll make 300 rupees in all, 100 rupees each, and we shall take our money and scuttle down the passes like kitchen bandicoots, and once we are there, we'll throw over a few clods of earth, and grass won't grow where the rice is thrown. Ah, you have much mind, laughed Siddhaya quietly, sucking away at his hookah. We all said that. Why not, uncle? We earn 4 annas a day for each man hand, and that makes 1 rupee 12 annas a week, and that makes 7 rupees 8 annas a month. That's what we make, and throwing in the 3 rupees or so that our women make, and the little that the brats make, and taking from all this are 5 rupees for ragi and rice water, the rest is all with the Sahib. And what after all is the railway fare we owe to the Mestri? We still can have our 300 rupees to take back with us. Now isn't that true, uncle? Well, so be it, said Siddhaya, and walked away silently. He knew that when one came to the blue mountain, one never left it. But for Satanna and Sundaraya, who had not brought their women with them and had sworn before the goddess, Goddess, break my legs if ever we seek the toddy booth. For once you get there, the wide frothy toddy rises to the eyes, and as the Madaya beats the drum and everybody sings. Laugh, laugh, laugh away, the King of Heaven is coming. Hey, the King of Heaven is coming. Say, Badaya, the King of Heaven is coming. Pot after pot of toddy is brought to you, and you drink and you sway your shoulders this way and that, and you cry out, well done for our Madaya, and the King of Heaven is coming. And money goes this way and that, and there are marriages and deaths and festivals and caste dinners, and a sheep costs 5 rupees now, and Rama Chetty sells fine rice at 3 seers and a half a rupee, and butter is 12 annas a seer. And then so much for the maestri for procuring an advance, and so much for butler Sylvester for stolen fuel, and so much for bhatta's interest charges. For if your woman has put forth a she goat needs a he goat, and a he goat, well, you have to weigh it out in gold. And gold has vials as a wanton woman has vials. 300 rupees. Well, if he'll have it, let him have it. This much I know, nobody who sets foot on the blue mountain ever leaves it. That is her law. For 10 years deaths and births and marriages have taken place. No one that came from the Godavari has ever gone back to it. And the old Sahib is dead, and the new one, his nephew, has not only sent away many an old maestri and man, but he has bought this hill and that, and more coolies have flowed into the Skeffington Coffee Estate. He is not a bad man, the new Sahib. He does not beat like his old uncle, nor does he refuse to advance money, but he will have this woman and that woman, this daughter and that wife, and every day a new one, and never the same two within a week. Sometimes when the weeds are being pulled or the vermin killed, he wanders into the plantation with his cane and pipe and puppy, and when he sees this wench of 17 or that chit of 19, he goes to her, smiles at her, and pats her on her back and pats her on her breasts. And at this all the women know they have to go away, and when they have disappeared, he lies down there, and then while the puppy goes round and round them, and when the thing is over, he takes her to his bungalow and gives her a 5 rupee note or a basket of mangoes or plantains, and he sends her home to rest for 2 days. But when the girl says nay and begins to cry at his approach, he whistles, and the maestri is there, and he asks the maestri, to whom does this wench belong? And the maestri says, she is Sampanna's granddaughter, or she is Ketayya's young wife, or she is to be married to the Dasaiya the one-eyed. And that night Sampanna or Ketayya or Dasaiya is informed of it, and if he does not send her, a week's salary is cut, and if he does not send her, then still more salary is cut. And if he still does not send her, he'll get a whipping, and the maestri will entice the wench with this or that and bring her to the master. It's only when it is a Brahmin clerk that the master is timid, and that since the day Sitaram wouldn't send his daughter, the master got so furious that he came down with his revolver, and the father was in the backyard, and the young son shouted out, the Sahib is here, the Sahib. And as Sitaram hears that, he rushes to the door, and the Sahib says, I want your daughter Meera. And Sitaram says, I am a Brahmin. I would rather die than sell my daughter. Impudent brute, shouts the Sahib. And bang, the pistol shot tears through the belly of Sitaram. And then they all come one by one, this maestri and that butler, and they all say, Master, this is not to be done. and he says, "Go to hell," and he takes his car and goes straight to town to see the district superintendent of police. And there is a case, and it drags on, and the Sahib says he will pay 1,500 rupees, 2,000 rupees as damages to the widow and children. But he paid neither 1,500 nor 2,000, for the red man's court forgave him. But everybody in the Skeffington coffee estate knows now he'll never touch a Brahmin girl. And when a Praya says no, he hardly ever sends the Mestri to drag her up at night. That is why when Bade Khan came, the Sahib said to himself, "This will be a fine thing. A policeman on the spot is always useful." And so it is, for Bade Khan has just to sneeze or cough and everybody will say, "I lick your feet." No, not exactly. Those Brahmin clerks Gangadhar and Vasudev go straight in front of him and do not care for the beard of Bade Khan. They are city boys, you see, and when they are there, even Rachanna and Sampanna and other Prayas say, "Let Bade Khan say what he likes. Our learned ones are here." And it is they indeed, Gangadhar and Vasudev, that took the Prayas down to Kanthapura for the bhajans, and it is they that asked our learned Murthy to come up. They said the Prayas must learn to read and to write, and when they can do this, they can speak straight to the Sahib and ask for this and that, money and material and many holidays. Why should not Praya Rachanna and Sampanna learn to read and to write? They shall, and Bade Khan can wave his beard and twist his moustache. What is a policeman before a Gandhi's man? Tell me, does a bow stand before a lion or a jackal before an elephant? Thank you.